The fluorescent lights in St. Mary's Hospital corridor buzzed with the kind of persistent hum that made everything feel surreal. I'd been sitting in the uncomfortable plastic chair outside room 314 for 3 hours, watching nurses walk by with clipboards and families whisper in worried clusters near the vending machines. When my sister Victoria finally emerged from Dad's room, her designer heels clicked against the linoleum with the sharp precision of someone who'd made a decision. "Michael." She didn't sit down, just stood there in her perfectly tailored business suit, looking down at me like I was something unpleasant she'd found on her shoe. "How is he?" I asked, standing up. Through the glass window I could see Dad connected to various machines, his usually robust frame looking smaller under the hospital blankets. "He's stable. For now." Victoria crossed her arms. "But we need to talk." "Okay. Mom, David and I have been discussing the situation. We think it's better if you don't visit anymore." I blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Don't visit Dad. Don't call. Don't show up at the house. You're dead to us." The words hit like a physical blow. "Victoria, what are you talking about? He's my father too." "Is he?" Her voice was cold, calculated. Because fathers usually leave something to their children in their wills. Fathers usually don't completely cut one son out of the family business. Fathers usually don't refuse to even acknowledge one son's existence in family photos. I felt my chest tighten. It was true that Dad and I had been estranged for the past 5 years, ever since I'd walked away from Fletcher and Associates, the accounting firm he'd built from nothing. Since I'd told him I was starting my own company instead of taking over his legacy. "He's been asking for you," I said quietly. "No, he hasn't." Victoria's smile was sharp. "He's been delirious from the medication. The nurses said he's been calling for someone named Michael, but David and I explained that he doesn't have a son named Michael anymore." "You told the nurses?" "That Michael Fletcher died 5 years ago when he abandoned his family." I stared at my sister, this woman who used to braid friendship bracelets for me when we were kids, who used to sneak me extra dessert when Mom wasn't looking. Now she was standing in a hospital corridor telling me I was dead to them. "Victoria, I know we've had our differences, but..." "Differences?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You walked out on Dad when he needed you most. You started a competing firm. You stole 3 of his biggest clients." "I didn't steal anyone. They chose to work with me." "Same thing." She checked her watch, a Cartier that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Look, I don't have time for this. Mom's flying in from Phoenix, David's handling the business and I'm managing Dad's medical care. We don't need complications." "Complications? You, Michael. You're a complication we can't afford right now." I nodded slowly, processing what she was really saying. "This is about the business, isn't it? You're worried that if Dad recovers he might want to reconcile. Might want to bring me back into the company." Victoria's expression didn't change, but I saw something flicker in her eyes. "Confirmation. There's nothing to bring you back to," she said. "You made your choice 5 years ago. What if I want to see him anyway? Then you'll be arrested for trespassing. I've already spoken to hospital security." She turned to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and Michael, don't bother trying to contact any of us. We've changed our numbers." I watched her walk down the corridor, her heels clicking out a rhythm that sounded like finality. Through the window I could see Dad sleeping, the heart monitor beeping steadily beside his bed. I stood there for another 10 minutes just watching him breathe. Then I walked to the elevator, pressed the button for the ground floor and left St. Mary's Hospital. But I didn't go home. Instead I drove to my office in downtown Chicago, a sleek space on the 40th floor of the merchandise mart that overlooked the Chicago River. Fletcher Financial Consulting had grown beyond anything I'd imagined when I'd started it 5 years ago. What had begun as a one-man operation had evolved into one of the most respected financial consulting firms in the Midwest. My assistant Sarah looked up as I entered. "Michael, I thought you were taking the day off. Change of plans. Can you get me the Morrison account files? The hospital chain?" "Of course." She paused. "Is everything okay? You look..." "I'm fine. Just need to review some contracts." 30 minutes later I was sitting in my office with the Morrison Healthcare files spread across my desk. Morrison Healthcare owned 12 hospitals across Illinois, including St. Mary's. 3 years ago, when they'd been facing bankruptcy due to a Medicare fraud scandal, I'd helped restructure their debt and create a financial recovery plan that had saved the entire chain. More importantly, I'd personally guaranteed a $50 million line of credit that had kept their doors open during the federal investigation. I picked up my phone and dialed. Morrison Healthcare, this is Jennifer. Jennifer, this is Michael Fletcher from Fletcher Financial Consulting. I need to speak with CEO Harrison Morrison immediately. Of course, Mr. Fletcher. Let me transfer you. Harrison answered on the second ring. Michael, how are you? I was just thinking about calling you. The Q3 numbers look fantastic. Harrison, I need a favor. Anything. You saved our asses 3 years ago. What do you need? I need patient information for someone at St. Mary's. Room 314. Robert Fletcher. There was a pause. Robert Fletcher. Any relation? My father. I see. And you need? I need to know who's listed as his medical power of attorney, who's authorized to make decisions, and who has access to his medical information. That's a pretty specific request, Michael. Harrison, do you remember what I told you 3 years ago when I guaranteed that line of credit? You said we were partners now. That's right. Partners help each other. 20 minutes later, Harrison called me back with information that made everything clear. Victoria had indeed been granted medical power of attorney. But more interesting was the insurance situation. Dad's medical bills were being covered by a combination of Medicare and a supplemental policy through Fletcher and Associates. The same Fletcher and Associates that, according to my sources, had been struggling financially since I'd left. I made another call, this one to my banker. Michael Fletcher for Patricia Wong, please. Mr. Fletcher. How can I help you today? Patricia, I need you to check something for me. The Fletcher and Associates business account. What's their current balance? I can't give you specific information about another company's account, you know that. What if I told you I'm considering a potential acquisition? Well, in that case. I could hear her typing. Let's see. Fletcher and Associates has a current balance of negative $847,000. They're significantly overdrawn, and we've been in discussions about foreclosure on their business loan. What about their line of credit? Maxed out at $2.3 million. They've been in default for 6 months. I thanked Patricia and hung up, pieces of the puzzle falling into place. My family's business was failing. Dad's medical bills were probably astronomical. And they needed me gone to avoid any potential claims on the company assets. But they'd made one crucial mistake. I called St. Mary's directly. Patient billing, this is Carol. Carol, this is Michael Fletcher. I'm calling about my father, Robert Fletcher, in room 314. I'm sorry, sir, but I can't discuss patient information unless you're authorized. Actually, I think you'll find that I am authorized. Can you pull up his file? I waited while she typed. Oh. Her voice changed. Mr. Fletcher, I apologize. I see you're listed as the primary guarantor for Mr. Robert Fletcher's account. That's correct. Is there something specific you need to know? What's the current balance on his account? As of today, $127,000. But that's just the first week. Considering his condition and the projected length of stay. I understand. Carol, I need you to do something for me. I need you to change the authorization on that account. What kind of change? Remove Victoria Fletcher and David Fletcher from any decision-making authority. I want all medical and financial decisions to go through me exclusively. Sir, that's a significant change. Are you sure? I'm absolutely sure. And Carol? I want you to flag the account for immediate attention if anyone else tries to make changes. Of course, Mr. Fletcher. I hung up and leaned back in my chair looking out at the Chicago skyline. My family had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. My phone rang an hour later. A known number, but I answered anyway. Michael Fletcher. Mr. Fletcher, this is Dr. Sarah Kim from St. Mary's Hospital. I'm your father's attending physician. Dr. Kim. How is he? That's what I'm calling about. Your father's condition has deteriorated. We're looking at the possibility of emergency surgery, but we need authorization from the person responsible for his care. What kind of surgery? A cardiac procedure. It's risky, but without it. She paused. Mr. Fletcher, your father may not survive the night. Do whatever you need to do. I'm on my way. Actually, sir, there's a problem. There are people here claiming to be your father's family, but according to our records, you're the only authorized contact. They're demanding access and it's creating a difficult situation. I smiled grimly. Dr. Kim, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Until then, hospital security has my permission to remove anyone who's not authorized to be in my father's room. The drive to St. Mary's took 18 minutes through downtown Chicago traffic. When I arrived, I could see Victoria, David, and my mother clustered around the nurse's station, clearly agitated. My mother saw me first. Linda Fletcher, 72 years old, her silver hair perfectly styled even in crisis, wearing the kind of expensive casual clothes that were supposed to look effortless but probably cost more than most people's rent. Michael. Her voice was flat, cold. What are you doing here? I'm here for Dad. Security. Victoria called out. I told you he's not allowed here. The security guard, a large man in his 50s, approached us. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I pulled out my wallet and showed him my ID. Actually, I think you'll find that I'm the only person who's supposed to be here. The guard looked confused and walked over to the nurse's station. I could see him having a quiet conversation with one of the nurses, who checked something on her computer and nodded. He walked back over to my family. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask all of you to leave. Mr. Michael Fletcher is the only authorized visitor for the patient in room 314. That's impossible, David said. He was Victoria's twin, though they looked nothing alike. Where she was sharp and polished, he was soft and rumpled, the kind of man who'd always relied on others to solve his problems. Sir, it's what our records show. Victoria's face was turning red. There's been a mistake. I have medical power of attorney. Actually, I said quietly, you don't anymore. She spun around to face me. What did you do? I exercised my rights as the primary guarantor of Dad's medical expenses. Primary guarantor? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. That's right, Mom. I've been paying for Dad's medical insurance through my company for the past 3 years. Ever since Fletcher and Associates defaulted on their business insurance. The silence in the hospital corridor was deafening. Other families walking by were starting to stare at the scene unfolding near the nurse's station. You had no right, Victoria said. I had every right. I've been covering Dad's medical expenses, his life insurance, even the mortgage on the family house since your business started failing. David found his voice. That's not true. I pulled out my phone and showed them my banking app, scrolling to the automatic payment section. Fletcher and Associates medical insurance, $3,400 per month. Robert Fletcher life insurance, $1,200 per month. Mortgage payment for 1247 Elm Street, $4,800 per month. My mother sank into one of the plastic chairs. Michael, I don't understand. 3 years ago, when Fletcher and Associates started having financial problems, Dad called me. Not to apologize, not to ask for reconciliation, but to ask for money. He said the business was in trouble and they couldn't afford the insurance payments. He never told us that, Victoria said, but her voice was weaker now. Because he was embarrassed. Because admitting that he needed help from the son he'd disowned would have been humiliating. So you've been paying for everything? My mother asked. Not everything. Just the important stuff. The stuff that would have destroyed him if it had been repossessed or cancelled. Dr. Kim appeared at my elbow. Mr. Fletcher? We need to discuss your father's surgery. Of course. I looked at my family. You can wait here, but I want to be clear about something. I'm making the medical decisions now. I'm paying the bills. And I'm the one who'll decide who gets to visit. I followed Dr. Kim down the corridor, leaving my family in stunned silence. The surgery took 4 hours. I spent most of it in the waiting room drinking terrible coffee and thinking about the phone call I'd received 3 years ago. Dad's voice, quieter than I'd ever heard it, asking if I could help with some temporary financial difficulties. I'd said yes without hesitation, even though we hadn't spoken in 2 years at that point. Even though he'd told everyone I was dead to him when I'd started my own firm. Victoria, David, and my mother had disappeared sometime during the second hour. I assumed they'd gone home to regroup, to figure out how this new reality affected their plans. Dr. Kim found me around midnight. Mr. Fletcher? The surgery went well. Your father is in recovery. When can I see him? He's still unconscious, but you can sit with him if you'd like. Dad looked smaller than I remembered, surrounded by machines and monitors. His hair had gone completely white since I'd last seen him, and there were new lines around his eyes that spoke of worry and sleepless nights. I sat in the chair beside his bed and waited. He woke up around 6 a.m., his eyes confused and unfocused. "Michael." "I'm here, Dad." "I thought," Victoria said. He tried to sit up, but the machines prevented much movement. "Victoria said I was dead to you." "I know. I've been trying to call you for 3 years." I leaned forward. "Dad, I've been getting your calls. Victoria had them forwarded to my office. She told me you were drunk dialing, that you didn't really want to talk to me." "That's not." "I wanted to apologize. I wanted to tell you how proud I am of what you built." The words hung in the air between us, 30 years of complicated father-son history compressed into one moment. "I know about the business, Dad. I know about the financial problems. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want you to think." "To think what?" "That I'd failed. That everything I tried to teach you about business was wrong." I took his hand, noting how frail it felt. "Dad, businesses fail. People make mistakes. It doesn't erase 30 years of success. I should have asked for your help directly, instead of going through the insurance companies and banks." "You did ask. 3 years ago. I've been helping ever since." "But Victoria said." "Victoria's been managing your finances. She didn't want you to know that the help was coming from me." Dad closed his eyes. "Because she thought you'd use it against us. Because she thought if you knew I was helping you might want to reconcile. And that would complicate their plans for the business." "What plans?" I hesitated, not sure how much to tell him while he was recovering from major surgery. "Dad, how much do you know about Fletcher and Associates' current financial situation?" "Victoria and David handle most of that now. They said business was picking up." "Dad, the company is $3.2 million in debt. The bank is preparing foreclosure proceedings. Without the payments I've been making, you would have lost everything 2 years ago." The heart monitor beside his bed started beeping faster. "Michael, I don't understand." Over the next hour I explained everything. The failed business ventures David had invested in without telling Dad. The clients Victoria had alienated with her aggressive management style. The loan defaults, the insurance lapses, the mounting debts that had been hidden from him while he'd been dealing with his own health problems. So when I had the heart attack, they saw an opportunity. If you died, the life insurance would pay off the business debts. If you recovered but stayed estranged from me, they could liquidate the company assets without interference. And if we reconciled, I might have asked uncomfortable questions about where the money had been going. Dad was quiet for a long time, processing everything. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "That depends on what you want to happen. I want to see my son succeed. I want to be part of that success if you'll have me." "And Victoria and David?" "They made their choices. They chose money over family. Let them live with the consequences." 2 days later, Victoria showed up at the hospital with a lawyer. "Michael, we need to talk." I was sitting beside Dad's bed, helping him with physical therapy exercises the nurses had recommended. "I don't think we do. You can't just take over Dad's life like this." "I'm not taking over anything. I'm just not hiding anymore." The lawyer, a nervous-looking man in an expensive suit, stepped forward. "Mr. Fletcher, my clients believe there may have been some undue influence in the recent changes to your father's medical arrangements." I looked at Dad, who was sitting up in bed looking stronger than he had since the surgery. "Dad, do you want to tell them or should I?" "I'll handle this." Dad's voice was stronger too, more like the man I remembered from my childhood. "Victoria, David, I know about the business. I know about the debts. I know about the money Michael's been paying to keep our family afloat." Victoria's face went pale. "Dad, we can explain. You told the hospital I didn't have a son named Michael anymore. We were protecting you. You were protecting yourselves. You were hoping I'd die so the life insurance would solve your financial problems." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mr. Fletcher, those are serious accusations." "They're not accusations. They're facts." Dad reached for the folder of financial documents I'd brought him. "I've reviewed 3 years of bank statements, loan applications, and business records. My company has been systematically looted by my other 2 children while my 3rd child kept us from losing everything." David finally spoke up. "Dad, we were trying to save the business. By stealing from it, By forging my signature on loan applications? By lying to creditors about our assets. We were going to pay it back. With what? Victoria, your salary alone was $200,000 a year from a company that was losing money every month. Victoria tried one more time. Dad, if you'd just listen. I'm done listening. Michael, what do you need from me? Over the next week we restructured everything. Fletcher and Associates was dissolved. Its remaining assets transferred to pay creditors. Dad came to work for Fletcher Financial Consulting as a senior advisor, bringing decades of experience and a list of contacts that had remained loyal to him personally rather than to his company. Victoria and David were cut off completely. No family money, no business support, no access to Dad's medical information or legal affairs. 6 months later, Dad and I were having lunch in my office, reviewing the quarterly reports that showed Fletcher Financial Consulting was now the fastest-growing financial services firm in Chicago. Any regrets? I asked. About Victoria and David? About any of it. Dad looked out the window at the Chicago River, where boats were carrying tourists on afternoon cruises. I regret that it took a heart attack for us to have an honest conversation. I regret that I let pride keep us apart for 5 years. But I don't regret learning who my children really are. They were scared, Dad. People do desperate things when they're scared. They were greedy, Michael. There's a difference. A year later, Victoria called my office. Sarah told me she'd seemed nervous, asking if there was any chance I might consider a meeting. I thought about it for a long time. Then I told Sarah to give her my personal number. Michael. Victoria's voice was smaller than I remembered. Victoria. I wanted to apologize. Okay. I know you probably don't believe me, but I never wanted things to go as far as they did. What do you want, Victoria? I want to explain. I want you to understand why we did what we did. We met for coffee at a place downtown, neutral territory where neither of us had any history. We were drowning, she said after we'd ordered. The business was failing, Dad was sick, and we didn't know how to fix any of it. So you decided to cut me out. We decided to protect what was left. We thought if you came back you'd want to take over everything. We thought you'd push us out. I never wanted to take over Fletcher and Associates, Victoria. I had my own company. But you were always Dad's favorite. The golden child who could do no wrong. That's not how I remember it. Because you were too young to see it. Everything Dad did was about preparing you to take over the business. David and I were just there. I studied my sister's face, looking for signs of manipulation or deception. Instead, I saw exhaustion and something that might have been genuine remorse. What do you want from me now? I want to rebuild. Not the business that's gone. But maybe we could rebuild the family. What about David? David's getting help. For the gambling, for the drinking. He knows he screwed up. And you? I'm working for a nonprofit now. Financial literacy programs for low-income families. It doesn't pay much, but it's good work. We talked for 2 hours. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was a start. Victoria would never again have access to family finances or business decisions, but she was still my sister. Still someone I'd grown up with, learned from, loved despite everything. Dad was skeptical when I told him about the meeting. She hurt you, Michael. She hurt all of us. I know. But she's also family. Family doesn't try to destroy each other. Sometimes it does. Sometimes family is complicated and messy and people make terrible decisions when they're scared. Dad considered this. What are you thinking? I'm thinking maybe we have room for one more person at Sunday dinner. It took another year, but eventually Victoria became a regular at our weekly family dinners. David took longer, but eventually he joined us too, sober and humbled and working as a counselor for other people struggling with addiction. We never talked about the business, never rehashed the old arguments about money and inheritance and who deserved what. Instead, we talked about Dad's grandchildren, about Victoria's work with her nonprofit, about David's recovery and the people he was helping. It wasn't the family we'd been before. It was something different, something built on truth rather than assumptions, on forgiveness rather than pride. And sometimes, when I looked around the dinner table at these people who had once declared me dead to them, I thought that maybe this version was actually better. More honest. More real. More worthy of the love that had somehow survived everything we'd done to try to destroy it.